Okay, so stuff we need to know for our unit exam on Monday, right? First thing we covered in this unit was the history and structure of the atom. Okay, now just so you know, the format of my test is as follows. There are going to be some multiple choice questions and some written response questions. Okay, there are far more marks in the written. Okay, it's a much bigger part of the test than is the multiple choice. All right, I'll go into detail about how much of each kind there are here in a little bit. History of the atom, that's going to be multiple choice stuff. Okay, so yeah, should you know a few important names? Probably. Okay, you know, like Dalton, he's pretty important. His atomic theory, the 4 points, those are pretty important, right? They're going to end up in multiple choice questions. You know, like you could very easily get a question like, which of the following is not one of Dalton's points in his atomic theory? Okay, you'd have to be able to recognize which one doesn't fit. Things like that. Things that are just testing your recall, okay, of the history and structure of the atom. You know, who discovered the, you know, that the atom had a nucleus, and you know, things like that. Just kind of go over that stuff. I'm not saying you have to memorize, but just be able to recognize the correct answer. Okay, structure of the atom. Yeah, there's some multiple choice on that. Okay, you know, about protons and neutrons, and you know, how many of each there are, and you know, when a atom gets in a reaction, which does it lose or gain? What number can change in an atom? Protons, neutrons, or electrons? Electrons, yeah, okay. Otherwise, you're changing the nucleus, right? If you change the number of protons or you change the number of neutrons, you're changing the atom. Okay? You're changing the nucleus of the atom, and that's either nuclear fission, kaboom, or nuclear fusion, kaboom. Okay, those things don't happen in a reaction. Just the number of electrons changes. So things like that are structure of the atom, being able to understand how that works. Okay. Also, in terms of structure of the atom and numbers of particles, you are going to be asked in the written response to draw a diagram of an atom. Okay, I expect that diagram will be of the currently accepted model. Right, so you'll have to go through your notes, see which model do we currently accept. And you're going to need to get the numbers of particles right. Okay, the number of particles and the location of the particles has to be right. So when you draw a picture of whatever atom I ask, it's got to have the right number of protons, the right number of neutrons, the right number of electrons, and they got to be in the right place. 5 marks. Okay, and you get 2 marks for, like, well, 1 mark for the right model, 1 mark for everything in the right place, 3 marks for the correct number of everything. Okay, so make sure that's a gimme one, really. Everybody should get 5 out of 5 on that one. Okay. Then we went over naming, which is probably our most fundamental skill for this entire unit. You can't do reactions if you can't write formulas. Okay. So yes, there'll be some multiple choice, like, you know, what's the proper name of CuCl2? Right? You choose from the list of possible identities. Okay, or you could have you know, a reaction written out, and I write it all out in words, and you've got to write it out in formula form. Well, then you've got to be able to write the right formula from the name. Okay, so there's some multiple choice, but it's also part of the written in terms of writing reactions properly, and it's also part of the mole equation. Okay, I'm going to give you the names in words. You got to be able to write the formula correctly to get the right molar mass, and so on and so on. Okay, so naming compounds, that's a pretty crucial skill. Okay, then we went into properties of compounds. Okay, that was lesson 4. Okay, as well as your properties of compounds lab. Okay, so there could be a lot of questions. Well, I shouldn't say a lot. There'll be some questions in the multiple choice based on that lesson. Okay, and it could be things like what you were asked to do in your lab. Like, I give you a description of a compound. Let's say I say you've got a red crystalline solid that is highly soluble in water, highly conductive of electricity while in solution, and has a pH of 6. This would be A, cobalt nitrate, B, copper 2 chloride, C, iron oxide, D, sugar. Okay, well, we got to think back to lesson 4. Okay, if it conducted electricity, it was ionic. If it's highly soluble in water, that fits too. It wasn't a strong acid because it had a pH of whatever I said, wasn't a strong one. Okay, and it was a red crystalline solid, and all red crystalline solids contain cobalt. Done. It's cobalt. Okay, so stuff like that. Applying what we learned in that lesson to identify something. Okay, that's the skill you'd have to demonstrate to me with a question like that. Okay, so that's going to be multiple choice. Okay. Then we talked about solubility. Okay, there's a lot of terminology to do with solubility. That'll be in the multiple choice. Knowing what a solute is, a solvent is, a precipitate, okay, things like that. Saturated, insoluble. Okay. So definitely know your terminology. Okay. Skills, though, would be identifying from a reaction whether a precipitate is formed, which was what you were asked to do in the analysis of your reactions lab. Okay, you had 2 reactions that formed precipitates, and you had to figure out which ones were the precipitates. So if I give you an entire reaction, you've got to be able to go, okay, one of the products is this, that's soluble using my solubility chart, and the other one, oh, no, that's not soluble, so there is a precipitate, and it's that one. Or if it asks which of them is soluble, then you go and say, okay, well, that one's a precipitate, so that's not the right answer. That's the soluble one. That's the right answer. Okay, something along those lines. But you have to demonstrate to me that you can use your solubility chart effectively. Okay, that would also be a multiple choice question. Okay, and then in the written response, there will be an application question. Okay, and that's going to combine solubility and reactions. Okay, only one of the reaction types that we went over produced precipitates. Okay, and because I want this one to actually test what I wanted to test, I'm not going to give you much more detail than that. Okay, it's going to be a situational question. And so you're going to have to read the kind of preamble for it. This is what's going on. Here's the situation. Now, how can I apply what I know about solubility using my solubility chart, reaction types to answer this question? Okay, that'll probably be the toughest, like, thinking question on the test. Okay, that's going to require you to think outside the box. Okay, to create some stuff, to generate some stuff. Okay, that'll be kind of a real higher level thinking question. Okay, that same lesson we talked about the polar nature of water. Okay, so there'll be a couple of multiple choice, but this is mostly going to be a written response item. You're going to need to explain a few things. You have to be able to explain what a polar molecule is. Okay, remember that, like the electrons not being shared, okay, that kind of thing. Okay, probably something about hydrogen bonds. We talked about those as well. Okay, and we talked about a few examples of living things that use this. The 2 we talked about were trees and the Jesus lizard. Okay, so that's also kind of an application question, being able to explain to me, okay, here's a situation where this applies, here's how it works, here's what a polar molecule is, and here polar molecules can form hydrogen bonds because, okay, whatever. That's the kind of thing that's going to be in there, right? So you are going to have 2 written response questions that will require you to write kind of a paragraph answer, okay? There'll be 2 of them like that. Okay. Then we went on to reactions. If there is one thing on this test that is worth more marks than anything else, and by a significant margin, it is this. Okay, there's only a couple of multiple choice questions about reactions, and it's mostly what type of reaction is this? Okay, like simple kind of recall stuff. Most of this is going to be in the written response. Sorry, not 3. There's more than 3. I can't remember how many. I'll check later. Okay, there's going to be several balancing questions where all you'll have the whole reaction, you just have to balance it. Write out, identify, type, and balance. There'll be a few of those. Okay, basically exactly what was on your assignment that you got back today. Okay, there'll be some that are just balancing, some that'll be write it out. Okay, I give it to you in words, you write it out in formula form, identify the type and balance, and predict the products. Okay, those are 4 mark each questions. Okay, well, not the balancing. The balancing are 1 mark. Okay, that's a 4 mark question. That's a 4 mark question, and there's several of those. Okay, so they add up pretty quick.
Which questions are on the test?
I'm going to go over that in a little bit. Okay, first I'm going over what's on there, then I'll tell you how much. Okay, and then mole equation. Okay, probably the next most heavily weighted thing. Right, and that's simply because it's problem solving, and by its nature, the questions are worth a few more marks than other types of questions are. Okay, so you're going to have, I put 3 or 4 of those on there. We'll check in a minute, but okay, there's several of those. You know, there's only 4 ways I can ask them, and you've seen me do all 4 kinds 4 times. Okay, so you have lots of ones you could go back and look at. Okay, either in your notes or watch the podcast again. Okay, of me going over how to solve those mole equation problems. There's nothing going to be surprising on the test. There's no way I can ask a mole equation that I haven't already showed you. Okay, so if you're afraid of the mole equation, don't be. You've seen all the ways I can ask it. Okay, so make sure you go over those. That's it. That's what's on there. Okay, we spent all this time, but it's really only 7 things. Okay, but they get distributed kind of evenly. Yeah. Okay, so in terms of numbers here. No, physics is bigger. Global systems and energy. I've taught it in as little as 5 days. Okay, we have 33 multiple choice questions. And like I said, guys, the multiple choice questions are pretty straightforward. They're recall, they're terminology, they're simple understanding kind of things. Okay, they're not questions that should take you very long. In fact, you should be doing several per minute. Okay, in terms of timing, I would say between 2 and 3 per minute. Okay, so realistically, the multiple choice part, even though there's 33 questions, should probably not take you longer than about 15 minutes. Okay, the bulk of your time needs to be spent in the written response where there are 51 marks. The whole test is out of 84. All right, so there are 7 balancing questions. Okay, written response we're talking now. Okay, written response, 7 balancing equations. So there's 7 equations, fill in the blanks. What needs to go in a blank if it's a 1? A 1. Please do that. A few people did not do that on their chemistry, on their reactions assignment. I didn't mark it wrong, but I will on the test. Okay, if it's supposed to be a 1, put a 1 in there, because otherwise I don't know whether you did it or left it blank. You have to show me you know it's a 1 and that it's not left blank. Okay. Then there are 4 reaction questions, and they are all involving predicting the products, identifying the type, balancing. Okay. They are 4 marks each. Then we have our picture of the atom question, okay, which we talked about already. And 4 mole problems. So 1 of each. Hmm? No. There's 51 marks. Okay. Each one of the mole equation questions, some are worth 3, some are worth 4. Okay, depending on how much is involved, right? There's 33 multiple choice. I'm not done the written yet. Okay. Okay. Then we've got our polar nature of water. Okay, question. Okay, we talked about how that was going to be part of this. So being able to explain what a polar molecule is, any behaviors of polar molecules. Then our solubility problem. Okay, the one where you're going to get a situation and you've got to apply your knowledge of solubility to and reactions to it. That's it. There's 6 written response items, but obviously a few of them have an A, B, C, D. Okay. All right. So a couple of things about your exam, because this is your first grade 10 science unit exam. Okay. So a couple of things to be aware of. I will let you use your periodic table on this condition. I'm going to come around and look at them first. Okay. If you have written too much stuff on your periodic table, then I will give you a fresh one. Okay. By too much stuff, I mean you've got a whole bunch of stuff written on there about, ionic and molecular compounds and, stuff that really should be on there. Really, the only thing you should have written on your periodic table that I'll really allow would be like the prefixes. Okay, you can write the prefixes on your periodic table. Beyond that, there shouldn't be much else written on there. After. Okay. Your preparation, I know a few of you have said you've been preparing already. That's awesome. Okay. Make sure you're preparing over the weekend. And by over the weekend, I don't mean, oh, it's 8 o'clock Sunday night, I better open my book. If that's how you're planning to study, I weep for you. Okay. You can't possibly study this unit in enough detail in that amount of time. And an all-nighter is not going to help you either. Okay. You need to be working on this in steps. I don't mean like spend your whole weekend poring over science unless you really want to. Okay. But, take an hour here, take an hour there, take some breaks in between. Okay. You can't study like nonstop for 8 hours. That's not good for you either. You're not going to remember anything. Okay. Study for an hour, then take a break. Go do something else. Okay. Come back, study for a half an hour, go do something else. Okay. Pick and choose your stuff. Use your marks to tell you what things you really need to look at. Okay. Look at your quizzes. If you did poorly on a quiz, click on it in PowerSchool. Okay? And I've told you this before, but when you click on it, there'll be 2 links there. Okay? One link will take you to the questions. You click on it, it'll take you to the PDF that I put on Google Classroom. And the other one will say, so the first one will say quiz 5 questions. And the second link will say podcast of quiz 5. You click on that, takes you to YouTube. That's the recording I made while we marked the test together. All right? You can watch that and know whether you did the questions right or wrong. Okay? The practice test. Definitely an important thing, but should be let's say a late Saturday, early Sunday kind of thing. Okay. Don't leave it till Sunday night to do, because if you have problems on it, it's too late now to go over the stuff you didn't get. Okay. But it's also a good way to find out what you know or don't know. Okay. That's why I've put it on there. Okay. And like I told you before, the skeleton of that practice test is the skeleton of the test that you will get. So there'll be some on this, some on that. I've already told you what's on there, so you kind of know, you have an idea. Okay. Other things in terms of test taking in general. At the end of every question, I tell you how much it's out of. Okay, like for the 4 reaction questions, it says 16 marks. Well, it's 4 marks each. Okay, for the rest of the questions, it's like this question's out of 3, this question's out of 5, this question's out of 2. Okay, if it's worth a lot of marks, there's probably a lot of steps to be shown. If it's a 1 mark question, probably just an answer right in front of you, you just need to recognize. Okay, so that's something to think about. Because occasionally I have people on a 1 mark question show me like 10 marks worth of work, and it's all wrong because they didn't have to do any work for a 1 mark question. Okay, so have a look at the question, and if you're like writing continued on back for a 2 mark question, you've already written like a full page on it, you're writing way too much. Okay. Bring to the test the following things. You need to have a calculator. It can't be your phone because your phones are going to be in that blue bin over there. Okay, so before you get your test, I call you over to that table, you turn your phone off completely. It's not on silent, it's not on standby, it is off, and you have to show me that it is off. Then it goes in the box, then you get your test, for 2 reasons. People never use the silent function correctly, and the damn things vibrate in there, okay, which is more distracting than if it had rang. Okay. Second thing is, of course, if you're wearing an Apple Watch or some sort of device that can communicate with your phone, if it's on, it can still communicate with your phone. We can't have that. Okay, so it has to be off, completely off, and you have to show me it is completely off. Okay, so you have to have a real calculator because you can't use the calculator on your phone. Okay, you don't need a TI-83 calculator for this test. Okay, if you don't have a calculator right now, you can go to Walmart and get like a $5 scientific calculator, and that will do everything you need it to do. Okay, don't go out and spend hundreds of dollars on a calculator for this test. You don't need to. Okay. Pencil. It would be advisable to do most of the test in pencil. Okay, especially the calculations and the multiple choice. Okay, if you want to do the paragraph kind of questions with pen, that's fine. Okay, but especially the multiple choice, and here's why. Okay, I use a program on my phone called ZipGrade that marks the test, right? It basically takes a picture of the test and matches it up with the pattern. Okay, so if you do this on a question, you're like, oh, it's totally D. Oh wait, no, it's not. It's B. That was no, it's not B. It was no, it's this one. People do that. Don't do that. You know what my phone says about that question when it marks it? It's wrong. There aren't 4 correct answers for that question. That's all it recognizes. You filled in 4 answers. They're not all right. Okay? Only one of them is right. So have a pencil. And my suggestion is for most people when you do this, okay, when you're doing the multiple choice the first time through, I just put a little tick in the one I think is right. And then at the end of the test, I go in and fill them in more. That way, if I have to make a change, I only have to erase a small tick as opposed to the whole shaded thing. Okay. All right. Do you have to do the test in order?
No.
Nope. Don't do the test in order. Unless you really feel strongly about doing the test in order. Okay. If you're that type A, you're even more type A than me. But my recommendation is this. Read through the test and number the questions according to what order you're going to do them in. Okay. I mean, the multiple choice you might want to do in order, but that's up to you. The written response, though, do the questions you're sure you know how to do well first. Okay. It's good for a number of reasons. You're sure you get those done. You knew how to do them. Get them done and show me you knew how to do them. Get all the marks available there. Okay. Plus, you do a question you know how to do first, you feel better about yourself because like, sweet, I got that one right. I know I did that one right. Now I can approach this question I'm not as sure about with a much better attitude. Okay, there's nothing worse than sitting and staring at a question you don't know how to do and accomplishing nothing. And I see that happen all the time. Okay, a person doesn't finish their test because they looked at a question and stared at it and they didn't know how to do it instead of doing the questions they knew how to do. Okay, always do the ones you know how to do first. Get them done. Okay, I want to see what you know how to do. So show me the ones you know how to do. If there's one at the, at the end, it'll still be there if you didn't know how to do it. Okay, and if that's the only one you don't get done, okay, it's not the end of the world. At least you got all the ones you knew how to do done. Okay, so make sure you keep that in mind because it's easy to get stuck. Okay, you don't want to get stuck on a question. Okay, don't let it rob you of the opportunity to show me the other stuff you know. Okay, show all your work. If it's a problem-solving question like a mole equation or something like that, show all the steps. Okay, they're all worth marks, and if you make a calculation error, then at least you get 3 out of the 4, 2 out of the 3, or whatever. Okay, so show all of your work as you go. You guys have me in period 4. So recommendations for how you approach this during the day. If you like really desperately feel like you have to study over lunch hour, okay. But it's also important to relax a little bit on the day of a test. Okay, like when finals come, I see these people out, like they're standing outside the door and they're trying to cram stuff into their head last minute. You're not remembering any of that. Okay, you're just not. From an educational perspective, all the research says you're going to forget everything. Okay, preparation long term is what's more important. So it's better to kind of do things to relax yourself and come into the test feeling that way, as opposed to coming in going, okay, am I going to remember all that crap I just tried to jam in my head in the last 5 minutes? Okay, that's not going to help. In fact, what that often leads to is blanking. Okay, if you spent all of break right before the test trying to cram more stuff in, all that stuff ended up in your short-term memory. How long does short-term memory last? Yeah, about 3 minutes. Okay, so right as soon as you get your paper and open it up, that's when your short-term memory resets. And you'll get the sensation of, oh crap, I don't remember anything. And that's really stressful, okay? And I don't want that for you. So I would actually recommend don't do that, okay? Don't try and do that cramming last minute. You're not gonna remember any of it. Take it from a guy who used to do it all the time. It doesn't help, okay? Get a good lunch too, okay? If you need to have a snack in here, okay, that's fine. I'm okay with that. Have a bottle of water and a snack, a granola bar, not like a 500-gram bag of Doritos. That's kind of rude to everybody else. Okay? So I once had a kid do that, like the big giant bag, okay? Crumple, crinkle, and then he chewed with his mouth open too. We had to just take it away from him. It was driving everyone crazy. Okay, so a good, kind of exam snack that's quiet to eat. Not an orange. Had a person do that too, and then their fingers got all sticky. And they were sticking to the test. Little things. Okay. But yeah, if you need to have a snack during the exam, fine, go ahead, have a snack. Okay, have a good lunch. You need blood sugar, and you got to have good blood sugar in order to do well and have your brain perform. Okay, little things. They don't have to do so much with studying, but just being ready. All right, any questions from you guys, real quick? How to what? The last one? So the one with finding the mass from number of molecules? Yeah, okay. Okay, guys, paying attention here, please. So what's the mass of 2.5 times 10 to the 24 molecules of, let's say, calcium nitrate? Okay, so it's calcium nitrate, so that's going to be CaNO3 2. Right, so the molar mass of that's going to be 40.08 plus 28.02 plus 6 times 16. Okay, so we got 488 point, whoops, hang on, I got an extra 0 in there. That's better, 164.1 grams per mole. Okay, so now I have big M. If I want to find out the mass, I need N and I need big M. I have big M. I need to find the number of moles. That's what I use this and what other number for? Avogadro's number, right. So to get the number of moles, I take the number of molecules I have and I divide it by the number in 1 mole, Avogadro's number. Oh, sorry, 10 to the 23. Okay, so when I do that, then I'll get N. So we'll have 2.5 E24 and divided by 6.02 E23. Okay, so we got 4.15 moles. Then we multiply by that, and we got our mass. Yeah. So if you're looking for number of moles, then you divide. If you have number of moles, you're going to multiply. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions there, guys? Okay, if questions come up over the weekend, obviously you guys being in the afternoon have the advantage of you can come in and see me in scheduled help on Monday, okay, or lunch on Monday, but I do have first half supervision on Monday, so it'd only be available second half of lunch on Monday, okay. Just consider that if you're coming in with some panic questions, okay, that's fine, I'll help you with those, but just make sure you've got them, okay.